Welcome back again to another episode of Big Red's Isopods. This week I'm a little bit late on my video because, as you can see, I've gone camping. But don't worry, we're back again at it with episode 2 of 2. So here we go. So I kind of had to change my setup here because these containers are so much bigger. But you always make sure that you clean the spoon first before you do anything. So I already did that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take these bigger containers here and we're going to be transferring them over. So first, we're going to be starting out with my powder blues, as you can see here. There's so many of these containers. As you've seen in my other videos, my Pronotis have just exploded with how many isopods there are in each container. So obviously we're gonna have to get them transferred over. And just like the smaller containers, I'm gonna be taking big scoops of dirt here. Obviously a lot more for these containers because they're so much bigger. But if I run out of dirt, I've got spare dirt just behind me here, just in case. Because I knew I had to do lots of container swaps. There we go. Now we're going to be taking my my clean spoon here. Oh my goodness. You're going to see how many isopods there really are in here. Hundreds, if not a couple hundreds. Hundreds of isopods, and there's so many babies underneath here. It's crazy. So with these containers, actually I might just end up using my hands. There's just so many isopods. So much dirt. And with each handful you can just see how many, all those white specks in there, that's all baby powder blues. There's just so many babies in here. Actually, these might be dwarf whites. So this here is something that all isopod keepers are terrified of seeing, and it looks like dwarf whites have found their way into my powder blue cultures. Now, this could have been from when I had them in their old setup that was near the powder or near the dwarf whites, or it could have been because I wasn't careful enough when switching it over. Which isn't too bad because these powder blues are a relatively hardy species. So I will have to be transferring these guys out of here. I'm going to try to do that in a way where I'm going to start a new culture of the powder blues because eventually these guys are all going to die out, and I'm going to be separating the dwarf whites, and this will just end up becoming a dwarf white culture. But these things happen. Hopefully we don't have the same thing when we run into, or when we take a look at the other container of powder blues. Actually, now that I think of it, it's not a big deal that there's dwarf whites in here, because the powder blue species is a North American species. So in that case, I've gotten really lucky. The dwarf whites are a tropical species, so what I can do is I can actually put these guys in an area, like a refrigerator, where it gets quite cold. And what will happen is the dwarf whites are all going to die out because they are not prepared for any winter seasons, and the powder blues will remain okay due to the fact that they live in North America, and they live in northern places in Europe, I do believe, as well, and they are prepared for winters. So these guys will actually survive the winter, where dwarf whites are going to die if I put them in a cold place like that. So I'm gonna test that out and see what happens. But anyway, we're done with the culture swap. Oh, got the leaves. We're done with this culture swap of the powder blues. And let's take a look at the other container, and hopefully there's no dwarf whites in there. Like I said, if there is, it's not going to be a big deal. We'll just put them in a colder environment, and all the dwarf whites will die off, and we'll just be left with the powder blues. So here's my second powder blue culture, or wild type of the Procelia pronatus. We're just going to do exactly like we did with the last one. I'm going to fill this up with dirt. Only about halfway of what you normally would want, because we're going to be taking dirt from the other container. And as you can see in this container, there is a lot more powder blues, which leads me to believe, oh no, there's dwarf whites in here as well. Which is unfortunate, but like I said before, all we got to do is put these in a colder environment, and all the dwarf whites are going to end up dying, and we'll just be left with the powder blues. Just going to quickly wash my hands just to make sure that there's no dwarf whites. And again, we're just going to fill the rest of this container up with some of this worm casting soil. And it's okay if you bury some of the isopods. These guys can dig just fine. go. That's my powder blues transferred over. Next, we're going to be looking at my cultures of powder oranges, which again are crazy in numbers. You can see here, we have hundreds and hundreds of them.
Just like before, I'm going to be transferring over good.
I'm going to be using my hands here to move over half of the culture. Now thankfully I can already tell there's no dwarf whites in here, since it's fairly obvious. You can tell just by looking in the soil, the way that the babies are moving around, that they're not dwarf whites, which is really good, thank goodness. I'm not too worried about the powder blues or wild types, so if I wanted to I could catch some of them in my backyard. Where this morph, the powder orange, is not native species. It's a morph that was created from the powder blues and is a little bit more sought after by most beginner isopod hobbyists. I'm just being careful here as I pick up handfuls of dirt and isopods. Careful not to crush any. Just kind of doing a scooping motion here. And again, just like before, gonna fill up the rest of this container back with new soil. These guys a new piece of bark, and they'll be all set. Nice new home for them. Here we got a second powder orange culture, and as you can see by how much frass there is and how many isopods, this culture right here is the one I was worried about the most for crashing. There's just so many isopods in here. It is just outstanding how many isopods there are in there. Ooh. Get out of there. Don't want you guys living in here. And it can be that quick for isopods to just take over another container. You just accidentally have one on your hand, and then next thing you know, you got two species trying to outcompete each other for resources, and that's how you lose some of your cultures.
just wanted to give you guys a reminder that these videos are hard to edit, and they do take some time, so any liking, commenting, or subscribing does go a long way. I appreciate you all for watching. Thank you.
There we go. That's our powder oranges all done up. I'm very glad that neither one of these containers had any dwarf whites in them. So it's just the powder blues that we have to deal with. Last species we're going to be transferring over today is my Procellulavis dairy cows. Now, as you can see, there is so many in here. I got so many different layers of logs. There's so many isopods in here. So let's get this transfer started. I can tell you right now, I'm definitely glad I bought more dirt because I'm gonna need it. I'm gonna have to mix some up before I finish this video. Show you guys how I mix up my dirt in the last video, so I'm not going to be showing you today, but I'll get that all mixed up and sorted out, and then I'll finish up the video. All right. Now these are larger species of isopods, so they're going to feel a lot stranger as I gather them up, but it's got to be done. So I'm just going to reach in here just like before, start hand bombing some isopods over. see here, guys, I made another batch of soil here. I already had all the ingredients ready, so it was real quick for me to do. We're just gonna go ahead and finish our isopod swap here. Just about done. Got one more for the dairy cows to do, and then we'll switch over my small container of the powder oranges, and then we're done our container swaps for this week. Hopefully for a while. It is relatively expensive to do these container swaps, so I don't like doing them too often, but obviously they're necessary so that we don't get overrun with isopods. Or have your cultures die off, like I was talking about last week. If culture die off, we really don't want any of that to happen. So that's why it's really important for us to do these culture swaps. Now we're down to the last container we're going to be doing this week, and this one's going to be a real simple one. So The reason why it's going to be so simple is I'm actually just going to be transferring this entire container over into the big bin. This container is obviously too small for these guys. They're having a hard time breeding. There's a lot of frass in here, but with how much we're going to be transferring over into the big container, it should be all good to go. So actually in this one, instead of putting a low layer of soil, I'm going to be trying to put in quite a bit of soil. And this is what I normally do when I move up a size in containers. I have shown bin swaps in the past, not usually from this medium container. The medium containers is actually what I started out with, which actually aren't very useful in my mind unless you're going to start off a large species in a medium-sized container, like one of the Magnificus or Hoffman Sagai would be okay to start in one of those medium containers, but they're not good to move to for a normal species per se. So that's all I'm going to do there. What we're actually going to do is just like before, we're going to transfer everything over that we can. And we're going to carefully, you can see there's just way too many isopods in here. And there you go. There's our last container transferred over. As you can see, they're running around in there. Way more space in here. It's going to be so much nicer for them. Add a few layers of bark here. Dump in the rest of the leaves I got. And they should do just fine. Alright, now I got one giant mess to clean up, but at least all my isopods are happy, moved over, and doing just fine. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining me on this week's episode of Big Red's Isopods. Dirty episode of Big Red's Isopods. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me transfer over all my isopods that I had to switch over this week. And I hope you guys can join me again next week for another episode. And I'll let you guys know what happened with the powder blues and the dwarf whites when I put them in a colder environment, and see if I can get the dwarf whites to be killed off. Alright, like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys again next week. Bye.